Hey guys, I did something that should have been done a very long time ago. I wrote some code to fully integrate the Maschine MK3 with FL Studio, and it includes a bunch of features that people have been requesting for years. So you can see some of those up there on the screen right now. This is going to be a long video, pretty in depth, so make sure to jump to the relevant chapter that you're interested in, or go ahead and sit through the whole thing. I think it'll be valuable to watch everything. If you like what I'm presenting here, you can check the description box to find out how you can get your hands on it. So let's get into the demo. In the Mac, you want to go to Finder and go into your root directory, users, and then whatever your username is, you go in there, and then documents, and then image line, and then FL Studio, and then settings, and then hardware. Okay, now in this hardware directory, you make a folder. You can call it whatever you want. I already made mine. I called it NI Maschine MK3. So you go into that folder and you put all of your files in there. All right. This .ncc file that's provided does not need to be in here, but I keep it in there because it kind of makes sense. It goes with the rest of the stuff. But all you really need are these Python scripts in here. The next thing you need to do is to make sure that your hardware is configured correctly to work with these scripts. So that is what this .ncc file is for. You can double click it, or you can open up the control editor software. So if you didn't double click it and you just opened up control editor, what you would do is go to file, open configuration, and then you would navigate to the folder where your .ncc file is stored and just double click that. All right. Now your hardware has all its controls mapped correctly so that it can work with the scripts. Okay, so this is how you set up your Maschine MK3 to be used with FL Studio. You go to options, MIDI settings, and then you're going to see two different things for your machining here. This is on a Mac. I'll show you how it looks on Windows in a minute. But the one we care about is the Maschine MK3 virtual input. So down here at controller type, just make sure it's enabled, by the way, right? Down here at controller type, you just go on the list and you want to select this one right here, NI Maschine MK3 user. All right, the user just means it's like a user-defined script. It's not like a built-in thing. The reason it says NI Maschine MK3 is because that's what I named it in the script. So that could be whatever, but this is the one you want to choose. All right, now the next thing you want to do is set your port. I'm using port 0. You got a whole bunch of ports to choose from. You just want to make sure it's not conflicting with any ports that you may be using otherwise. I'm not really using anything else, so I just leave it at 0. Make it easy. Then the next thing is at your outputs up here, you got to make sure the Maschine MK3 virtual output is at the same exact port as down here. So again, mine is 0, and that's it. It's that easy. On Windows, you select the port for Maschine MK3 control MIDI, and I have 0 here. So at the top here, you'll see for the same thing, I have 0 as well. They have to match. Maschine MK3 control MIDI. Okay, so now that your MIDI settings are all configured, here's something that you should know. If you go to the view up here and then go to script output, you'll actually see the output of the script that's running, that's controlling your Maschine MK3. I don't believe I'm printing anything in the script, so you're not going to actually see any output coming from it unless there's a crash or something. I don't think you'll see any crashes because I tested pretty thoroughly, so it should run smoothly. But if theoretically there was a crash, you can come into this window here and press reload script, and that should get you all reset and back up running. Again, I don't think this will ever be necessary, but that's where you would go to reset things. In the top left corner here, we have the control section. This channel button toggles the view of the channel rack. So you see when I press it, it goes away and it comes back. I'm calling this smart toggle because it doesn't just simply toggle. It actually toggles in the smart way. So I'll show you here in a second what that means. This plugin button brings up your plugin, and then you can press it again to hide it. The arranger, another smart toggle, it brings up the playlist, and then you can hide it. Mixer works the same way. Okay, so before I go any further, I want to show you what I mean by smart toggle. Let's say I have my channel rack up, all right, which I already do, so I'm not even going to press that. And then let's say I open my playlist, right? In a normal toggle function, right now, if I press the channel rack button, since it is already up in the background, it would go off. And then I would have to press it again to bring it back up to the foreground. I'm calling this smart toggle because right now, it's more likely that the user intends for the channel rack to be brought to the foreground when the channel button is pressed because it's not visible at this moment. So when I press it, you can see that's exactly what happens, versus if it was just a normal toggle, I would have had to press this button twice to achieve the same result. All right, similarly for the playlist in the back, it is visible, but it's not in the foreground, right? The channel rack is what's in focus. So if I press the arranger button in a normal toggle, the playlist would disappear and then come back on top. But you can see if I press it, it just brings itself on top, which I think is just a minor enhancement in your workflow, but it can make a lot of difference in just streamlining the experience. So that's what I mean by smart toggle. So we'll continue here with this browser button. And I think I would have made it open the actual browser in FL Studio, but it it seems to be kind of buggy when you attempt to do that. So hopefully that's something that they'll be fixing in their next release. But instead of bringing up the browser, I'm going to bring up the plugin picker. So when I press it, you get the plugin picker. And then when I press it again, the plugin picker goes away. One thing to note about this is that if I open my plugin picker and then I open another window on top of it, let's say the mixer, for instance, then let's say I want to hide the plugin picker. I can't hide it right now until everything that's in the foreground gets hidden. That's not a limitation of the script, but the just the way FL Studio works for whatever reason. So first I have to hide this mixer, and then I'm able to hide the plugin picker. So I'm just pointing that out, but this isn't something that you'll normally run into, because if you open the plugin picker, you're more than likely going to be selecting a plugin at this moment, not necessarily bringing up another window. All right. Now the sampling button, it doesn't do anything. There was no function that I saw like fit to assign to that button, at least that was supported by the MIDI scripting API. So it doesn't do anything. All right. I'm going to hide this playlist real quick. All right. This file button brings up the file menu. And if I hold select here, it will bring up the save project dialog. Now, if I had already saved this project, this window wouldn't have popped up here. Instead, it would just go right ahead and save the project, right? So it'd be kind of like an overwrite. It would have overwrote whatever you had saved. So just be aware of that. All right, so I'm gonna get out of there. Now, the settings button just brings up the settings. Right now it opens up to the MIDI settings specifically. If I press it again, it goes away. This auto button closes all the windows except for the channel rack. So let's say I have, I don't know, my mixer open and I have the plugin pulled up, right? I can just press auto to get rid of all these things. And now my favorite button, the macro button, this increases your pad's sensitivity. So there's kind of two ways to look at sensitivity. You have a velocity curve, which is it tells you how loud your output sound is in relation to how hard you hit the pads. But there's another way to look at sensitivity, which is the pad trigger threshold. So that's how hard you have to hit the pad in order to get any sound out at all. It's a known problem that in MIDI mode, this Maschine MK3 has less sensitive pads than when it's used with the actual machine software. Um, and again, by less sensitive, I mean it's just it takes a little more force to trigger the pad. What I've done with the script is to have the pads working in MIDI mode exactly as they do when you're running the machine software. So that's what this macro button does. It's on by default, so you're going to get more sensitive pads, and that'll just allow you to play, more dynamically, more fluidly, um, than how it just comes out of the box. So when this, I'm calling it an aftertouch hack. Um, so when this aftertouch hack is enabled, you lose access to your aftertouch, right? But that's what this button is for. You can turn it off and you will see the light goes off. And now it's in its normal mode where you have access to aftertouch. So to kind of demonstrate this, let's see here. I'll load up let's see, FPC, and then just load up some kit here. Okay. All right, so we got an instrument here. Now, if you notice at the top here, right, when I have my macro button unset, I can tap on this button lightly and hear no sound at all, even though that thing is flashing green. So it knows that I'm touching the button, but it's not doing anything about it. All right. So this is what this macro button does. When I turn it on, I can tap lightly and it detects my light taps, right? Normally taps that light would not get detected. So this is a pretty amazing feature in my opinion. I know a lot of people have asked for this. I've seen it in forums and native instruments forums, and the problem has just been left unresolved for years. So it's pretty exciting. Um, so yeah, if I turn it off again, you can see I don't get it picking up all the time. All right. Now, if you think it's too sensitive, you can keep it off and then you have access to your aftertouch again. One thing that's nice about when this is on is that I can actually trigger the pad without letting go of it, right? So I can trigger it multiple times without ever letting go of it, just by pressing it, right? So that's how that works. Okay, I'm gonna go over these four knobs here. The first is the mixer track knob. It controls the currently selected mixer track. I took advantage of the capacitive touch here, so as soon as you touch it, the mixer will pop up. So you can see here I'm able to select whatever track I want. And touching it again will not make the mixer go away because you can easily touch that by accident, right? So the volume knob here controls the volume of the currently selected mixer track. So you can see that here. It also snaps in place to 100%. The pan works in the same way. It allows you to pan on the currently selected mixer track. And I can select any track I want and do the same thing. Volume, pan. All right, so for this next knob here, that's the fixed velocity knob. It defaults to 127, which is maximum velocity. That applies to these pads here. You can trigger them at max velocity when fixed velocity is enabled, and this controls the level. So once you have fixed velocity enabled, the velocity will be fixed at whatever this level is set to. A little bit later, I'm going to show you how this fixed velocity knob will apply to the touch strip. Okay, I'm going to talk about this 4D encoder and these buttons next to it. So first of all, you'll notice 4 LEDs surrounding the encoder, and these correspond to pattern mode and song mode. So right now, since they're orange, that means that we're in pattern mode, right? So if you look at the software here, you can see this orange pattern button is selected. So if I switch to song mode, you'll notice that these LEDs turn green, right? So they respond to whatever mode you're in. All right, so that's an easy way to tell just by looking at the hardware itself what mode you're in. Okay, so these buttons next to the encoder, they allow the encoder to enter different modes. All right, so we have volume, swing, tempo, and lock. So in volume mode, your encoder will control the channel volume. And these are gate buttons, so that means I have to hold them down while turning the encoder. So I'll hold this volume button down. You can see it lights up while it's held down. And if you look at the software, you'll notice that I'm able to control my channel volume this way. All right, so these other buttons work the same way. For swing, I'm controlling the amount of the main swing that is applied to the selected channel. Okay, so to demonstrate that, I'm going to pull whatever plugin I have. I'm going to pull it up, and then I'm going to go to this wrench here. I'm going to make it detached so it stays on top. All right, so you'll notice this swing here, and as I hold the swing button down and turn the encoder, I can control my swing. All right, now this swing corresponds to this main swing here. So if I vary this swing, it'll do really nothing if I don't have main swing turned up. So in order to use this, I would turn my main swing up to whatever percentage I want, let's say 100. And now when I control my channel swing, it'll be in relation to my main swing. All right, so that's how that works. We have a tempo mode here. If you look at the top here, we're at 140 BPM. Holding the tempo button down will allow me to go up or down, right? So the lock button, it controls your snap. So if you look here, I have it, my main snap is a bar. So if I hold this lock button down, I can cycle between my snap modes, right? So right now I'm at none. I can go left line, so I can go back right to none. I can pick whatever snap I want. So this corresponds to your quantization as well. Let's say you're in the piano roll and you want to quantize some notes to the grid. You would first select your level of snap and then quantize, right? And that's provided that in your piano roll you have the snap to follow a global snap, or a main snap as they call it. Right? Now the note repeat button, I have that disabled. I think we all pretty much know what note repeat is, right? So you hold the button down and whatever pad you trigger, it repeats in succession at whatever rate is selected. The reason I have it disabled is because I don't think it's really feasible at this moment, at least, to enable that feature. I tried it and I got it partially working. But I didn't want to include it because it wasn't working very well. And what I mean by that is the clock in the software that keeps track of, your tempo, it started to drift from the clock in the script. So if I set both clocks at a certain rate, they would be at that rate for, the most part, but after a while they drift apart. And so, after testing that out, I knew it didn't even make sense to really dive into implementing the full note repeat functionality, because then you just get drift. Um, in quick successions, maybe, it would be feasible because then you can quantize after, but I didn't really want to implement it if I knew the clocks weren't even going to be really in sync anyway. But if that's something that FL Studio does improve, I'd be happy to look into that in the future. I'm gonna go over these four buttons here, which are the pad input mode buttons. So we have pad mode, which is the default mode. Then we have keyboard, chords, and step. All right, so in pad mode, this allows you to select a channel. All right, so to demonstrate that, I'm going to open up some instruments here. Just open up a couple more. Oops. All right. So I have four instruments opened up here in the channel rack. And when I select the pad, so pad 1 will jump to my first instrument, 2 to my second, 3 to my third, and 4 to my fourth, right? So it kind of makes sense. It goes on in this way up until you get to 16, right? So you can select between 16 different instruments right there. If you have more than 16, well, then you'll page through them with these group buttons here. So let's say I had 32. Then to reach that next set of 16, I'll go to group B and do the same thing. I'd select whichever channel I want. All right. And so you can see here, let me see, how do I math this? That's 16, 16, 16, 16. That's 64 times 2. That's 128. All right. So you can control the selection of up to 128 instruments on the fly. Right? You're probably not going to have 128 channels in your channel rack. I don't know. But if you do, you can still control them all by grouping them, right? So you can see up here, um, I can select all my instruments just by clicking one. And I can go here and group selected, right? So let's just say I do that and call it group 1. All right. And then I go ahead and just add some more instruments. Right, I'll just add one more. And then I'll group this one into group 2. All right. So I'm in group 2. Let me add one more atmosphere. All right. So group 2 has two instruments. I can select between them. Let's see. Oh, I'm on the wrong group page. So I don't have more than 16, so I would need to be here. So you see, I can select easily between these two instruments. And then I can go back to group 1 and do the same thing. Right. So you can see you can just extend this infinitely and select whichever instrument you want. You also notice that you get an audition of the sound when you click or when you hit the pad, right? So you can hear Omnisphere there. If I load up let's see, some random instrument in contact, turn it up. I'll put fixed velocity on. Yeah. Then you can hear it, right? So if let's say I had drum samples here, right? Well, I can create a whole kit of 16 samples right there in the channel rack. And then I can group them, and that group will be my kit. And that group would be similar to how you have groups in the Maschine software, right? So easy. So that's how pad mode works. Serves two functions, allows you to select channels and also audition them, effectively playing them. All right, so we'll move on to keyboard mode here. I'm going to, we'll use Omnisphere here to demo this. So I'm going to start off in group A. Now, when you're in keyboard mode, the groups correspond to banks of scales, right? Remember, in pad mode, they correspond to sets of channels, but when you're in keyboard mode, they correspond to these banks up here. We have main, modes, jazz, world, and so on. Right now, these are the same banks that you get in the Maschine software. It took a very long time to individually type in the notes, so I hope this is appreciated. So yeah, I can flip through all these banks easily. All right. Now we'll demo that real quickly. We're in the main bank, and this knob here controls scale. So main bank, scale 1. And notice as I touch this knob in FL Studio here on the hint panel, you will see exactly what scale you're in. So I'm on chromatic, right? If I turn this scale up to 2, it shows me I'm in major, right? And so forth. As I switch it, I can keep seeing what scale I'm using, right? And that's just one bank of scales, right? I can go to, let's say, jazz, for instance, and see the same thing. I can see all the scales. Now notice as I scroll through my different available scales, these pads, the lights, they change, right? Now what that is your root note, right? So each time you see an occurrence of a root note, you have a new octave, okay? And these change on the fly according to what scale you're in. So right here, I'm in the major scale, as you can see up here. And so I'll just play that. Right? That's your major scale. If I want a minor scale, that's easy. I can just do that. Right? So you get the point. I have essentially the full harmonic engine of Maschine software built right into this MIDI script, and you get to access that in FL Studio. So that is really powerful. Let's see what else for scale. So we have the position knob here. That doesn't apply to scale. That applies to chords mode, which I'll get into in a moment. But we have octave, so that's self-explanatory. You can octave up or octave down. I support down 3 octaves and up 3 octaves, and then you have 0. All right, so if we octave up, we get okay. Semitone works the same way. It's just moving up or down a semitone. Right. Right. Or down. So you can see how that works. Also, if you touch this knob, you will see the key that you're in the FL Studio hint panel. And as I change it, that key will update. So you know exactly what key you're in at all times. Okay. Yeah. What else? Chords. All right, so we'll move on to chords mode here. And you'll notice when I switch between modes, I still maintain the scale and all my settings that I'm in. So if I'm playing, turn this down a little bit. If I'm playing, what am I in here? Minor, right? I can easily switch to a minor chord. Right? So that's convenient. When you're in chords mode, you can use these buttons at the top here to select the type of chord, right? So right now we're on the 1-3. All right, we have 1-5, 1-3-5, 1-3-5-7, and so on, exactly as you would have it in the Maschine software, but easily accessible here in MIDI mode. So we'll listen to that for a little bit. I want to change to a less harsh sound real quick. We'll go with pads and strings. We'll go with this one. All right. So you can hear that 1-3. Now we'll listen to the 1-5. All right. I'll put this scale down to major. It might be a little more recognizable then minor. So if we hear the 1, 3, 5, what am I doing here? Oh, sorry, I went down to 1. It should be on 2. All right, then we got our 1, 3, 5, 7s. All right, so this gets real fun to play with. So we got 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 7, and we have octave, right? And then you'll notice here we have custom. So you can fill in your own custom chord sets, and I'll show you how to do that later. I don't have any loaded now, but I'll load that up later and demo that. I want to go back to keyboard mode real quick just to show you. You have 16 scales in each bank, and the 16th scale is a custom scale, and I'll show you how to customize that as well a little bit later. I would recommend customizing it so that it controls your drum plugin, for instance, right? Let's say you're using FPC and you want your pads to correspond to how the pads are set up in FPC. Well, this is where you would set that up so these pads trigger exactly the pads you expect them to trigger in software, right? So that's the 16th scale in each bank. So that means you have 8 custom scales to work with just by using these groups here, okay? Now, going back to chords, we have the position knob here. All right, so this feature is available in Maschine software, and I believe they go down 8 positions and up 8 positions from the root. I support the root position, which is 0, and then 3 positions after that. I didn't go all the way down 8 and up 8 because it's really not necessary when you have octave, because after you invert your chords so many times, you get the same exact voicing again, just at a different octave. So if you use these 2 knobs in combination, you can achieve the same result without having to keep repeating those positions. All right, so we'll demo this real quick. We'll go to the 1, 3, and we'll listen to a chord. All right, and if oh, see, I was at 1 already. So now we'll go down to 0 and listen to it. All right, so those are both the same chord, just a little different voicing by taking the root note and pushing it up an octave. All right, and if you want to get the corresponding down shift inversion, you would just put the octave down. All right, so we'll try it on a 1, 3, 5, position 0. This is what it sounds like. Oh, wait. I'm on scale 16. I want to go back down to major just so that it's easy to recognize. So this is what it sounds like in the 0 position. And then first inversion. Second inversion. And then third. And if you notice, this third inversion, like I mentioned before, is an exact copy of the root position, just up an octave. So that's kind of redundant, because if I play this and then put it back down to root position and go up an octave, you get the same exact result. So that's why I didn't build out the position to go down 8 and up 8, right? I want to demo the 1, 3, 5, 7. That one gets very interesting with your inversions. So all right. Okay, so I think that pretty much covers it. And of course, the octave and semitones here, they apply the same way to chords as they do to scales, right? One more thing, if you look at these groups here, let's say I go to bank C, all right? So then I'm in my jazz bank. Moving to my keyboard mode, you can see that my bank is maintained, right? No matter what, even if I'm in keyboard mode and I go to G, if I go to chords, I'm still in G. So that enables you to switch between chords and scales on the fly and still maintain, you know, your exact scale and key that you're in. And this doesn't, this is these two input modes, keyboard and chords, they're independent from pad mode and step mode. So what I mean by that is if I go back to pad mode, you'll see I still have my first set of channels selected. And if I change it, it still doesn't mess with my keyboard or code or chords, right? My pad mode is still the same. And vice versa, right? If I change my keyboard mode, my pad mode is still maintained, right? So yeah, I paid very close attention to detail when I was designing all of this. The last mode here we have is step mode. And I want to start off by saying that these groups here, they don't do anything in step mode. Like you can flip through them, but it doesn't do anything other than light up. Step mode lights will just copy pad mode lights. See? So if my pad mode goes to H, then my step mode will go to H. But my pad mode lights, you know, actually have function versus my step mode doesn't. So don't worry about these buttons. They can serve another purpose in the future. If anybody thinks of any cool ideas, let me know. So when we're in step mode, we have access to just some miscellaneous functions here. We have copy, paste. If you look closely at the pads, you can see they say copy, paste, so that's exactly what they do. We have clear, so it's like delete. We have quantize here, which quantizes, and undo and redo, right? The rest of lights are off because they don't do anything at the moment. Now I want to talk about this touch strip. All right, so with the touch strip, we have pitch, we have mode, and we'll skip this button for now. We have notes. All right, so these are three modes that your touch strip can function in. And then there's a fourth mode that I'm calling free mode. So what that means is that neither the pitch, mod, nor notes mode is selected, right? So you're just in free mode. That's where we are currently. That's why these lights are off, or you could say dim. And when we're in free mode, that allows us to use the LEDs to see our song position. So I'm going to press play here, and you can see that the song position is being tracked on the LEDs. Now I'm going to slow the tempo down, and you can see the tracking slow down as well, right? So it's pretty tightly in sync with your song position, right? Now, when you're in this free mode, you're also able to scrub through the song position. So I can rewind or go forward, right? Wherever I want within the selected pattern or the entire song. So that is what I'm calling free mode. All right, so I'll stop that. And we can also enter pitch mode. So this touch strip then becomes a pitch wheel. But it's not much of a pitch wheel because there's no real kind of spring action. So it's a bit less musical than a spring wheel. And I attempted to mitigate this and sort of add like a spring constant in the code so you get more of that musical pitch wheel feel. But it wasn't really feasible. You know what? I only had like 50 millisecond cycles to do processing in, and that wasn't enough for emulating a pitch wheel. So unfortunately, that got left out. But that is an opportunity for image line. So image line, if you're watching, I hope you acknowledge in the comments. I have an idea here. This channel pitch knob, what ImageDesign can implement is uh, having a mode selection. So you'd have a touch strip mode effectively where you turn it on and then you have a field where you can, let's say they put one right here, you can apply a spring constant. So anytime that the pitch wheel, or I guess the touch strip, is released, then the constant specified here would define how fast or slow the pitch decays back to zero. All right, that I think that would be kind of trivial to implement in software. Then we wouldn't have to worry about doing it in like a MIDI script or whatever. So, and then you can always turn that off and the pitch could just be normal how it is, directly responding to an actual pitch wheel. So that would be huge. And I think that would kind of foster the adoption of touch strips um, in place of pitch wheels on like more portable devices. So yeah, let me know if that makes sense. But for now, we kind of have the digital representation of a pitch wheel, and I will say it's convenient for reaching half steps when you're in scales. Because when you're in scales, you're locked into the notes of that scale, but there are times when you want to break out of the scale and touch a half step up or down. And this pitch here helps you to do that. So I can demonstrate a little bit how it works. So basically, this is a whole step from here to here, but a half step would be one note down, and that's not in the scale, so I can use my pitch here to do that. All right. But you just got to know where to touch on the strip. So hopefully you get the point there. It's a pitch wheel, kind of. All right, the next mode is mod. So this is just like a mod wheel. You go up, you go down. And you can see in contact here, my mod wheel goes up and down. For you, it might not work right away if you're not listening on the correct port. So you want to make sure you go into the instrument options here and select the input port that is one above your device port. So my device port is on 0 right now, and I hard coded it in the script to send this mod wheel message to a port above. I didn't want to send it on the same 0 port. So whatever yours is, if you're port 25, you would put this to 26, and then it will respond to your mod wheel. All right. So you can see right there. Right, I get a little, I guess, vibrato or whatever. All right, so going over to notes. This is my favorite mode. It does what machine software does. You're able to play through notes, but I think I'm doing it a little better, and I'll explain why. But first, let's just demo it. Right, it's very responsive, buttery smooth. You can simulate strumming a guitar. Right. And the reason why I say I think I did it better than how they do it in machine software is because if I recall correctly, doing it in machine software applies a sustain. to your notes. So I don't believe you have control over that sustain. If you do, somebody let me know. But there are times when you want it, and there may be times when you don't. So the way that I have it, there's no automatic sustain applied, right? So I could run through, and that might be more appropriate for a synthesizer sound, right? Now, if you want to sustain, you would just need to use your sustain pedal, and then you get, and then I release, and it stops. All right, so this way you have a choice over sustain. I don't believe that choice is there in Maschine software. This notes feature applies to chords as well, right? So here I have chords. And I can do that with my touch strip. That's pretty much it for the modes of the touch strip. There is this perform button here, kind of just sitting in the middle of it. So I'll go over what that does. When you press this button, it jumps to the mixer track that the channel is currently associated with. So right now it's on the master track, right? If I change it to track 5, right, and I close my mixer, I can easily just press this perform button and it'll jump to track 5 in the mixer, right? So let's just put the track up to like 42 or something and then throw the mixer away. If I press this button again, it'll take me right back to track 5 because that's what track my channel is on. Right? If I want to link my channel to a different mixer track, I would just go to the track I want to link it to, let's say 12, and then I would hold select and this perform button, and then contact would then be linked to track 12, right, in the mixer. So now if I close the mixer, or let me just put it to something different, right? So it's on 42 again somehow. And then I press the button again, it'll open up to 12. All right, now we're going to talk about the transport section here. For the most part, it is self-explanatory. So I'll just start with play. Play just plays, right? Plays and pauses. Record enables recording. If you hold select and press record, that enables or disables the count in feature. So like a little countdown before you start recording. Stop just stops. Right, so if I play, it'll stop. I also made it so that the stop button will stop the recording mode as well. In my workflow, I've noticed that pretty much every time I'm recording something and then I press stop, I also want to stop the recording. Normally you have to stop and then stop your recording, or whichever order you prefer. But I just made it so that the stop also stops the recording. So let me know if that's a good or bad idea. But for me, that makes sense. We have restart, so if I'm playing something, I can restart it. Okay. Erase is just like delete. Then we have this tap here, so you can tap in your tempo. All right, so now when I play it back, it'll be that tempo. All right, I can speed it up. And then if I play it back, you'll hear. All right, so the last thing here is we have this follow button. That's just to enable and disable metronome. It'll light up right when metronome is on, and it'll be dim when it's off. I was thinking about putting the metronome as a secondary function under this tap here, since it actually says metro. But it just seemed easier to use this. So, okay, I'm going to talk about these pad section buttons here. Uh, we talked about fixed velocity already, so I can turn it off. I can turn it on and control the level here. One thing I should have mentioned earlier is when you're using the touch strip, uh, the velocity that it's playing at corresponds to this fixed velocity here. And the octave and semitones apply to the touch strip as well as the pads. Okay, so going back to these buttons, the scene button just pulls up the piano roll, as you can see here, and you can close it. Pattern switches between pattern and song mode, as you can see up here. And recall that my encoder lights update you on which mode you're in, so you can see those changing as well. Right. Events does nothing. Variation does nothing. Duplicate just does a copy paste. So if I pull up my piano roll and I put some notes in here, if I press duplicate, it'll just copy paste it. You don't have much choice over where it pastes to. That's just what's supported at the moment. So, but at least you get your duplicate and you can move it around, wherever. Select, we've seen this a number of times already. So it's effectively a shift button. Like if you're used to machine software, you have the shift down here, but in MIDI mode, that shift has no function. Well, has a function. It allows you to do some stuff up here, but it's not a shift anymore, essentially. So for that reason, I'm using the select button as a shift to give you secondary functions for each button. Then we have solo, which I'll pull up the mixer so you can see. It will solo your currently selected mixer track, right? And then you can unsolo it. There's a couple solo modes. If you look in the manuals, you'll see. You can select the other solo mode by holding select and pressing solo. So you can go look those things up if you're interested in exactly what the differences are. And then we have the mute button here. So that mutes the currently selected mixer track and you can unmute it. I also put a function for the choke here, which is a secondary function on the mute button. You have to hold select and press it. And what that will do is it will kill all notes that are playing from your device at the moment for all instruments. Okay, I'm going to go over custom chords and scales and how you can add your own. So in order to do that, you would go into the folder where you installed your Python scripts initially, and you would open up custom.py. Now in here, you're able to define your custom scales up here, and then down here, you have your custom chord sets, right? You have 8 of those, and then you have 8 of these. So right now I have it all, for the custom scales, I have them all the same. They're just, if you take the FPC plugin in FL Studio and just reset it to empty, then these should line up with the notes that each pad triggers. I've noticed that if you load in a patch, then apparently the note assignments change, so just be aware of that. But yeah, basically these are arrays in Python, and you would just edit in between these brackets here. See these pink brackets? Let me make this a little bigger. All right. So you would just edit these notes like C5, C sharp 5, D5. You just change these to whatever notes you want to trigger for each pad. And so C5 here would be the first pad. So it would be this one. And then, so on and so forth. So yeah, just make sure you stay in between the brackets and make sure there are 16 notes. So you can see this first array here corresponds to the first bank here, right? So that would be in keyboard mode. And then you go all the way to H, and this would be H right here. So hopefully that makes sense. Defining custom chord sets is similar. So we'll go into chord mode here. Each of these arrays, so you'll see there are 16 here corresponding to your pads. So this first one, for instance, would be this pad right here. Now, we'll go to FL Studio just to demo this real quick. I'll open up an instrument. Now, recall that the 16th scale is our custom scale. So I'm on 16 here, and we'll see what it sounds like. Well, actually, I have to go to custom here first, right? So don't forget to do that. Make sure we're on custom. And now we'll see what it sounds like, and it sounds like nothing because we have nothing in here. So if I put, let's say, C4, E4, G4, then that would be a C major chord. And then let's go back into FL Studio. We'll go View, Script Output, and just reload the script. All right, go back into chords mode, go back to custom, and now we get a C major chord. These don't have anything because I didn't define them yet, right? So let's say I go down to my last pad and I do the same thing. I don't know, let's do DS4. I think that's a minor. G4, right? And then save that, right? Go back in here and script output is already here. So we just reload the script, go back to chords mode, custom chords. We have our C major, and all of these are empty because they're not defined. But when we get here, we have our C minor, right? And with the custom chords here, the semitone and octave still apply. So we'll go up an octave, right? Up a semitone. Right? So that's all you would have to do to create your own custom chord sets and scales. I was just editing this first set of 16 chords here. That corresponds to, again, this first bank. If I were to edit this custom chord set 2, then that would correspond to this bank, and so on till you get to the end. And this down here would be H. So you get 16 custom chords times 8 banks. So that's a lot of chord progressions. All right, so I want to talk about these two buttons here. They go left and right between knob pages, which you can go into controller editor and assign whatever you want to those knob pages. Right now I have this knob page here built in. That's just a generic setup here. We have 8 knobs. I'll put this back down to 0. These are triggers, right? They trigger when you press them. This is a toggle. This is a toggle. And then these are gates. So as long as you hold these down, they'll be triggered. All right. So you can go in and change those for whatever your use cases are. We have 8 knobs here. You can go and modify those as well. I'm going to show you a common use case now, which is when you want to automate a parameter in a plugin. Or it doesn't even have to be in the plugin. It can be in FL Studio. That's easier. So let's say we want to automate this master volume slider here. We would just right click it and link to controller and turn the knob you want to use. So right now we have this guy controlling that. Super easy. Now it's a little bit more involved when you want to control something in a plugin. So if we open up Omnisphere here, and let's say we want to automate this parameter right here, this glide time, right? Well, you would need to open up an instance of MIDI out, okay? Then make sure your port is the same as the port that your instrument is listening on, which is port 1 here. I recommend putting it on the port that's not your device port. So choose whatever you want here, but whatever it is, just make sure that matches in here. So I'm going to put 1 and 1. Now this is listening to this, all right? So we want to make sure that we choose a CC number that doesn't collide with existing parameters. So to do that, we would go here and go to browse parameters, and we can see in the browser that pops up here, we don't want to use 0 because apparently it has a function. 1, 2, they have functions. 3 looks like the first free one I see here, right? You see 9 is not used, 14, 15. So we'll just go with 3, right? So in our MIDI out instance, we would just press this little gear here, put our control number to 3 in this case. You can give it a name if you want, number 3, all right? And then press accept. Now I'll right click this and link to controller, and then on my device, I will turn the knob that I want to use. I'll use this first one. So now they're linked. And remember, this plugin is listening to this MIDI out, but right now, as we said, CC3 is not doing anything. So we want this to respond to CC3. So all we would do is right click the parameter and hit MIDI CC learn. Then we will go and turn the knob and it will respond. All right. FL Studio allows you to uh, define your response curve essentially. So if I go into this guy again, right click, link to controller, I can make a linear response. So as much as I turn the knob is as much as my parameter will change, 1 to 1. Or if I want to be able to turn the knob slightly and have a drastic change in my parameter, I can use something like a 4x bigger increment, okay? So here's your response curve, hit accept, and now if I barely turn this knob, it's just gonna go way up. Yeah, it's gonna go way up, 4 times up. All right, so you can choose from a whole bunch of different response curves, but that's how you would control a parameter in a plugin, and you can automate it easily with these controls. I would recommend once you have this set up as you like for a plugin that you use a lot, you would just go and save it to a template, right? So you don't have to keep doing this setup every single time. Uh, yeah. So you can save, you can do it however you want. You can save MIDI out in your template project, or you can go here and save a preset and be like, okay, this is my Omnisphere MIDI out preset. So anytime you load up MIDI out and you go to your presets, you can choose your Omnisphere one and all your stuff will be set up as it was before. So that's how you would use this knob page. Again, you can go into control editor and delete it if you want, or do whatever you want with that. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you check the description box if you're interested in a link to the files.